Hello, writers. This is just a very brief sort of overview on Chapter 9 from your book, Proposals and Progress Reports, because in today's lesson 12, as I said in my lesson notes, I wanted you to really focus on getting some good topic proposals put together and submitted for Friday. And so unlike Chapter 8, which dealt with all those various types of technical reports, formal technical reports, informal technical reports, letter reports, in Chapter 8 that you did the forum activity on, and you looked at the two exercises in the back, and you're completing those activities for today. Today, I wanted you to, and you know, the goal of that is just to make sure you've read through the chapter and you've sort of reviewed the sort of elements that are useful there. Today, I want you to concentrate on getting your topic proposal put together, but I strategically scheduled these units in your book at the end of the course here so that you could see some examples. And I had said in an earlier set of lesson notes that this final project asks you to focus primarily on what kind of technical report you want to do, broadly conceived, with a specific purpose and audience, and that's what we're really after here. We're not trying to follow some specific formula from the book necessarily, so we don't have to sort of spend quite as much time in a unit learning all the basic features of one type of report, writing a resume or whatnot. That's not what we're up to here. What we're trying to test in this final project is how well you can come up with some of the actual sort of report or technical document that you have put together that is of interest to you, and that it doesn't have to follow some basic formula. There are some requirements. You know, there's a certain minimum page count or word count, around 3,000 words. You need to have some outside evidence. You have to fill out this portfolio. And it needs to be appropriate for the specific audience. It needs to be a technical report or a technical document. But that's basically it. And so these chapters are meant to sort of provide tools for you to help you. And so just the technical reports that we had in Chapter 8 that you wrote about in your forum, those are one type of examples of what students have done in the past. I posted some examples from students. You'll note there was a student paper about the eye diseases, and she had originally put together a document. She wanted to do all this research on the medical disorders of the eye, and you know, it's like, well, it's a 100-level tech writing course. We're not trying necessarily to write a research paper on a specific eye disease, but what might be useful as a technical document is to put together an overview of the basic, most common eye diseases that affect people and cause blindness. And then, so we refine this project with the student over time, and then you'll see in the student examples that she submitted a paper that had sort of this overview of eye diseases that is maybe for an audience not of doctors necessarily, but of patients or people who are just interested in see how there's some sort of idea of putting together a report or some sort of document that gives an overview here. So that's kind of the way that works, and that would be a kind of technical report that you might see in Chapter 8, these more formal research reports. Some of these are tricky to write because we're not necessarily working in a lab right now. Some of us aren't even in session at school. Some of the times these things line up well with work that students are doing in other classes, and as long as we're being open and upfront about the amount of work that's being shared amongst classes, I'm all for that. So I had a student last semester who wrote about restless leg syndrome. He was doing an honors thesis on it, and part of his work in our class was also used in that very in-depth medical paper that he did on restless leg syndrome. And so there's lots of options here. Proposals tend to be a really good option if you're totally uncertain about what you're going to write about for this final technical document. Think of proposals. Proposals are actually a paper that I've done for years in my composition class because it's a real fun sort of real-world example of how to consider purpose and audience in a very clear way. There tends to be a sort of straightforward format for proposals, and your Chapter 9 makes sort of a case for this. It talks about the types of proposals that go on. And of course, in any workplace environment, there's going to be lots of proposals because People are always trying to improve the working environment. They're trying to do things for their company. You might have to ask for money. You might have to ask for resources. You might have to ask for employees, staffing, all these sort of things. So it's important that you understand the basic elements of a proposal. For our purposes, you'll notice that there's a business plan or proposal that I posted from a student last summer who put together a proposal for a gaming center in Shatter. Okay, fun sort of project. So think about proposals. They could be anything. You want a skate park in your community. I had a student who wrote about improving the dog park in Shatter. We have a dog park, but it's not a very good dog park. So she put together a set of proposals to help us figure out a way to improve the dog park. So it's a proposal. Now, generally a proposal, as it is discussed in your chapter, there's a specific set of requirements or sort of sections usually in a proposal. And this is on page 239. I don't know if you can see that. Okay? And on 239, the standard sections of proposals, you have project summary, project description, introduction, rationale and significance, plan of the work, scope, methods, task breakdown, facilities and equipment, personnel, budget, conclusions. Well, you don't necessarily have to follow this formula completely, but for proposals, there's generally two parts to a proposal. The first part is you have to make a case. You have to make a case for something needing to be fixed. So let's take the dog park example. The student wanted to write about the dog park. She could have had a proposal for creating a dog park in Shatter. But it turned out there already was a dog park. People just didn't know about it. It's not in a very attractive part of the community. It's kind of behind some motels on the edge of town. It's not the most easily accessible, and it's not very well publicized. But the dog park existed. So she could have put together a proposal that said there is a need for a dog park in our community, and that would be the first part of the proposal. You have to make a case for the thing you're trying to, the problem you're trying to solve, the thing you're trying to build, the whatever would be really cool to have on campus. You know, a campus parking structure is one that comes up oftentimes because parking is always an issue on campuses. Let's build a parking structure and then put shops in the basement and all this other sort of stuff. These are cool proposals, but the first thing you have to do is you have to stress that there's a need for this parking. There's a need for the dog park, right? So that makes sense. So in the first part of the proposal is generally making a case or a rationale for why this thing is needed. Now, the examples given in your textbook come from very technical fields. They have to do with some proposals to set up research studies. So here's a research proposal. Proposal for undergraduate research scholars program, effects of simivastin and fluvastatin and endothymia. I don't even know what any of this is. So it's basically a proposal. Let us research this subject. Let us put some money and time and effort, and maybe we'll come up with some interesting responses to these medical issues, right? So it's a research study. It's a proposal for a research study. There's a second proposal here. Proposal for research report. Is animal rehabilitation in the future of veterinary medicine? So see how these are proposals to go and do additional studies. The proposals that I've had students write about are more typically project proposals, and they're fun to write about, and they can be really interesting technical documents, and they can be very realistic. So let's take the dog park example, go back to that. So the student wrote about this need for a dog park, okay? First of all, in the proposal, why do we need a dog park? I mean, you don't really need a dog park in your community. I mean, it's a nice thing to have, but how do you make a case for why we should spend money, time, effort, resources on a dog park? Well, you could make a case that dog parks help socialize animals so there's less examples of animal strays or animal biting incidents or whatever. I don't know if any of this is true, but you could do outside research to try and prove that this would benefit the community. Dog parks allow people to come together and let their dogs off the leash, right? So we have a leash ordinance in town, but so dogs need lots of exercise and socialization. Maybe a dog park does more something like that. It brings a community together. I don't know. You have to make a case for why the dog park is needed. With her particular proposal, the dog park already existed. So her proposal was more about what the inadequacies of the current dog park are. It didn't have good, it just was basically a fenced in area where dogs can run free. There's not very clear rules posted. There's not very clear signage. It's not very well publicized. It's not very well maintained. And there is no play equipment for the dogs. There's one pet cleanup station, and that's about it. So what she did in her proposal is that the first part, she says, here's this dog park. She provided some pictures, some images. She says it's not well advertised. It's not well built. It doesn't have activities and other things that people would bring people to the dog park. So she went through this in the first part of her proposal, and she explained all the deficiencies of the current dog park, right? So once she makes a case for why it is a problem, the next part of the proposal is the step-by-step process by which we could fix this issue. So where are you going to get funding in order to come up with the equipment to put in the dog park? And she mentioned some examples in her proposal that might work. Where are you going to get funding to do more publicity? Where can you put the flyers? All these things. Veterinary clinics. So she came up with a long list of specific actions and things that she would do to help improve this dog park, and how to make a case for how they would alleviate the problem, right? So a proposal is really about arguing your case. There's an issue that needs addressed. We have a proposal to address this issue. Here's how we will do it. And then the last part is always the money issue. Anytime you have a proposal, you're asking people to do things, you have to convince them that it can be funded, that it's feasible, that it's worth the money. Usually there's a budget attached. Usually there's some sort of details about who is going to be employed in this, which organizations are going to be targeted. That's another thing. For this dog park, we had to sort of research, well, who runs the dog park? Does it come under the city council? Is it the parks board? Right? So you figure out who your constituency is here. Now, other proposals that students might do might target CSE administration or your college's administration. They might target somebody at your workplace. So maybe you have, and they don't have to be gigantic, complex proposals by any means. These are technical documents. Maybe you just want a proposal to improve the break room at work. Maybe you want a proposal to create an outdoor lunch space for the place that you work at. And all you're doing is you're putting together a document that explains why you need this workspace, why it would be helpful to the organization, how much it would cost, what the steps would be to implement it, right? That's what a proposal does, okay? So Chapter 9, Proposals, gives you an overview of how to do these. There's also a section in Chapter 9 on progress reports. Now, I have not had a student write a progress report because generally these are activities or actions that are ongoing that are very specific and germane to a workplace, okay? So maybe you go to a conference, maybe you're doing some sort of activity, and I just don't see where this comes up very often in a campus context, all right? But if you can make a case in your proposals that are due for on Friday, due tomorrow, for some sort of progress report, and it makes sense, and it's a technical document, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just saying I haven't had any students do these sort of progress reports. These seem very specific to very precise and specific workplace scenarios. So that's a proposal. That's Chapter 9. Not asking you to do the homework at the end. There's lots of examples, good case studies. There's some really good exercises I'm so tempted to have you do at the end. But instead, I want you to focus on your topic proposals, but make sure that you're very familiar with the contents of Chapter 9 and the checklist. Again, I've had lots of students write proposals. If you don't know what else to write about, they are a good place to think about, because there are things you might propose fixing in any arena, from your personal life to your church to your workplace to your campus environment to your community. There's lots of interesting things you can do with proposals, so keep those in mind for your final project.